This is the orientation video for the binders for the Alabama HOSA State Leadership Conference competitive event. Each competitive event at SLC will have a binder. There will also be personnel that are assigned to run each one of the competitive events. Each event will have an event manager. This is the person that is responsible for making sure that the overall event flows well and is taken care of. This is also the person that will attend the orientation and pick up the supplies. Our plan is to have an orientation video for each event prior to SLC. Therefore, the event manager will come to orientation with any specific questions for their event. They'll sign for their binder and their supplies, and then they'll be able to go ahead and leave and go back to their room and start working with the personnel and the judges. The event personnel are also HOSA advisors, and you are there to help assist and handle all the different jobs that are required to run that event. You do not come to orientation. You will go straight to the assigned event room.
3 places.
As the judges come in, go ahead and orient them to where they'll be seated, what the event is like. Use the guidelines to just go over the event with them so that they understand what we're looking for in that event, what the kids are going to be judged on in that event, and they have a really good idea of what's to come and what they're expected to be looking for. Your judges, we have a variety of people that come in and make up our judges. Just keep in mind their final decision on scoring is the final decision on scoring. We do not change judges' scores. It is okay if you see something that might make a difference in how they score to make sure they are aware of it very discreetly, but in the end, it is up to them on how they score the event. Every event will not have courtesy core. Every event will not have judges. If it is a test-only event, you're not going to have a judge, with the exception of epidemiology, which has a case study. The only events that will have courtesy core are the events that require a patient. And the event managers will be notified in advance by email if they need to have a student acting as a patient in their event. We will try to keep that as discreet as possible because we don't want the competitors to be able to figure out which event or which skill might be required for that event. This is the contents page for each event binder. We'll go over each one of the sections individually. You will also find in the front pocket of your binder the final check sheet, and that sheet is there just to help you at the end of the event make sure that you have collected back up the documentation you need and have it ready to turn back into headquarters. Section 1 is event instructions and your room diagram. The event instructions are there to help you with the flow of the event, how to get it started, how to keep it moving along. Your event guidelines are what determines the rules of the event. The instructions are just to help with the flow. Our goal is to be consistent and fair with all of our competitors. The instruction sheet provides you with timelines if that's needed for your event, and that helps you keep your event on schedule. There is a certain amount of time the judges have to score. There is a certain amount of time the kids have for each skill, or for like creative problem solving. There's a certain amount of time they have to work on their problem. You need to have a timekeeper that is keeping up with each one of those time segments to keep on track. Events can last up to 4 hours. Many events will be shorter than that, but a 4-hour block of time should be expected for an event. As long as we keep it under 4 hours, that is clearly within the guidelines of the events in Alabama. If it is a skilled event, the instruction sheet will also specify the skill that's going to be required from your competitor and the amount of time they have to complete this skill. Once you've reached your time, you call time, and wherever the student is, that's where they stop. Judges will score on a Scantron. Just please remind them that they need to bubble in completely, and they do not need to make any extra remarks or marks on that Scantron sheet. That will mess up the scoring as it goes through. Provide them with paper for notes if they need it, but don't let them write on the blank places in that Scantron. The instructions will remind you to give the judges gifts and their thank you items after they've completed the event. It just kind of takes you through the whole flow from beginning to end. The event team will complete the event evaluation at the end, and your judges are going to have an evaluation at the end. You also will have a list of supplies, and that'll help you make sure that you collect everything back up before you come back to headquarters. Section 1 also includes the room diagram. Your room diagram shows you how the room should be set up when you arrive. If you need to move things around a little bit to make it work for you, feel free to do this. Just move it back before you leave. The room sets are set as event specific as they can be and still maintain the consistency for the hotel staff. We do not have sinks in any of the competitive event rooms. If your event requires a sink, this will be simulated with a basin and water. It is perfectly acceptable when the student comes in and gets their scenario that they can be told there could possibly be simulations in the room, such as sinks, biohazard areas, safe areas. Any of those things could be designated with signage, and the student is expected to work around that. It is part of the guidelines that there are simulated or can be simulated equipment in areas. Just do not orient them all at once with this, and do not orient them all at once where they can see the equipment that will be used with their skill. This could give them an unfair advantage, or it could give an unfair advantage to the last competitors to compete. They have that much longer to study before they go in there, and they already could have figured out what the event is going to be. So either cover the equipment, don't put the equipment out until after you've oriented all of the competitors in the room, or orient the competitors in the holding area. That's perfectly acceptable. You will have a table and chairs in the hallway right outside the event room door. This is there to allow you to control the students as they're coming into the room. It's a good place to go ahead and have them check them against the roster. It's a good place to check their guidelines, check their dress code, everything like that as you're getting them in the room. It also provides a place for one of the event staff to sit during the event. This keeps competitors from being outside the door and being able to hear, and it also allows you to keep the hallways free and noise free in the area. We did have some complaints last year that there was a lot of noise in the hallways that disturbed competitors. Section 2 are your sign-in sheets and confidentiality form reminders. We do not have physical confidentiality forms anymore. It is online at a link which will be provided in this section. Judges do not have to fill out the confidentiality forms, but the advisors do. So if they need to, they can go online right before the event and fill it out. If for any reason this is impossible, we will have some hard copy forms in headquarters that you can send somebody to get one. The sign-in sheets here, every event manager, event personnel, and judge should sign in on these forms so that we make sure we have proof that we had everybody needed to run that event in a fair and consistent way. Section 3 will be your list of competitors. They should be in alphabetical order. There is an area to document if they had their guidelines. This is for round 1 only, and only one set of guidelines per team is required. The only thing you will document here is if they do not have their guidelines. Otherwise, leave that area blank. There will also be a place for you to document dress code. Again, you document here only if they did not meet dress code. The smart device, if they violate the smart device policy, then document it here. Otherwise, leave it blank. We will handle all point changes in headquarters. This is also where you will document if there were any substitutions. just draw a line through the student's name, add the student that is present and is substituting in red ink in print so that we can make sure we try to get their name correct when it's called out in the award ceremony. You can substitute up to 75% of a team. You cannot substitute in individual events. In the event that you have a student that shows up to compete but they're not on your roster, just check and make sure that that student is in the right room. You know, they might be in public health and they came to health education. So just make sure they're in the right room. If they assure you they are, go ahead and add that student onto the roster and let them compete. We will take care of it when they get to headquarters. I'll go back and check and make sure they were registered for that event and that we're good to go. Section 4 is your resources and your references. You have a copy of the event guidelines to reference if you need it. You have a copy of the Alabama HOSA dress code. If there is a question about a kid's dress code, make sure that you are discreet about it. Don't ask the kid, but you can ask another event personnel to check and see what they think about the dress code. Just be discreet. We don't want to embarrass any kid. Refer to the dress code copy that you have in section 4 if you have doubts. And if it's questionable as to whether or not the kid meets dress code, then err on the side of the kid. Let them have the points. You also have here topic cards. If your event has a specific topic that the kids are supposed to be covering, then it's here. And you might want to provide these to your judges, because the students remaining on topic is part of the points in the rubrics for some of these events. For example, biomedical debates topic for 2018 is teen use of social media should be limited. So the judges need to know that that's what these debates are supposed to be about. Some of these topic cards will also have instructions for the judges, and you absolutely want to make sure your judges have these instructions. Section 5 are the Scantron sheets for the event. If you have a testing event, you will have Scantron sheets under this section. If you do not have a testing event, this section should be blank. Your Scantron should be pre-slugged with the competitor information, and we will do our best to get them in alphabetical order so that signing the kids in with the roster process is easier. If they're not in alphabetical order, I feel like it would help you to put them in order before trying to sign the kids in. Blank Scantrons are available in headquarters. If a student shows up that's not on your roster, then go ahead and let them test, but they'll need to fill out the top portion of their Scantron sheet, and they'll need a blank one. If your event competitors do not take a test during your event time, again, Scantron sheets will not be in this section. Section 6 are the Scantron sheets for judges. If you have a testing event that does not require a judge, then you will not have Scantron sheets in this section. If you have a testing, or if you have an event that requires scoring on a rubric, then you will have Scantron sheets here for your judges. They also will be pre-slugged with the competitor information. Judges should document their ratings with the number 2 pencil on these sheets. They should be given time to discuss and correct sheets at the end of your event. Remind them that they must erase clearly. They do not need to add any extra marks to the Scantron sheets. And the Scantron will document the winners in headquarters. The Scantron automatically averages teams. If they're on a team, it automatically ranks them based on national HOSA guidelines. Section 7 are your scenarios and scripts. Some events require a scenario in order for the competitor to determine the appropriate skills to perform. If your event requires this, then it will be found here. If your event does not require this, then you may not have anything under this section, and that's okay. If a patient is required, then you should have a script for the patient. Keep in mind the script cannot be written to take in all possibilities. Your patient should have instructions to cooperate or not cooperate with the competitor. If it does not address this, then the patient should cooperate. It will give them some general responses, but again, we can't determine every question that a competitor might ask. So once the patient creates an answer, they need to provide that same answer to every single competitor that asks that question. They also do not need to volunteer information. Only give information if it's requested from the competitor. Our goal is consistency. As long as we keep the situation and the answers consistent, each competitor will have to perform under the same circumstances, and it will be a fair assessment of their critical thinking and their content knowledge. Once every competitor has competed and the Scantrons are complete, then you need Section 8. Section 8 has the event surveys and the thank you cards for the judges. Ask the judges to complete an event survey and make sure that they understand this survey is very specific to just this event. It's not about State Leadership Conference as a whole, it's just about the event they were in. Our goal with this is to use this each year to make the event itself better. So we need very specific information on this. They also will have the back part of the survey, and if you would, please remember to ask them if they can think of some suggestions that we could give our competitors to make them better, then they can put them on the back of the event survey. The suggestions cannot be specific. It cannot say, little Johnny needs to speak up more. But if they had several students in, say, prepared speaking that spoke so low that they couldn't hardly hear them, then they could say, students need to project louder to be able to be heard clearly by the judges. And that's a nice general suggestion that I can send out to the teachers later. Then make sure you provide each judge with a thank you card in its envelope and a judge's gift, which you would have picked up in headquarters during orientation. Be as gracious as possible to these judges. Make them comfortable. Make sure they aren't nervous. We really do appreciate the people that come in and help us with this conference, and we want them to leave with a strong desire to come back and do this again next year. Once the event is completely over, now it's time to look at that check sheet in the very front pocket of your binder. Make sure that you've collected back up all of the equipment that we sent for that event, any of the signage for like sink or biohazard trash, safe area, that kind of thing. Collect that back up and put it back in the binder. Double check and make sure that if there were power cords, say in HOSA Bowl, there are power cords for those buzzers. Those are ours. Make sure we get those back in those boxes or the buzzer system will not work next year. And then bring the binder and the equipment back to headquarters and check it back in. Thank you all so very much for helping your kids, for bringing them to State Leadership Conference, for being willing to work these events and take them seriously so that we provide a quality competitive event for each competitor. I cannot thank you enough.